When David Parkin began his playing career at Hawthorn, he did after winning the Hawks' best and fairest in 1965. Later, he took the side to a premiership, and after 21 years and 518
the oldest statesman of the AFL coaching fraternity, at 57, with nearly 500 games to his illustrious name, David Parkin is a mercurial mixture of academic, reformer and old-fashioned ranter and raver.
The privilege of captaining Hawthorn to their second premiership in a game against St Kilda where we came from behind in the last quarter to win a very tight finish in front of 120,000 people here. That was probably the highlight of my football career. Having lived a parallel life as long as I can remember in education and in sport, when I was given the opportunity at Deakin in the early 1990s to establish the first sports coaching and administration course, was probably, in looking back now, one of the more enjoyable and satisfying experiences. Sports of all types have been central to influencing attitudes towards racial discrimination, violence against women, illicit and performance-enhancing drugs, homophobia, work-life balance and equal opportunity, to highlight a few.
Football gave my brothers and I a sense of community, and it gave me a sense of belonging.
You can make a difference, every one of you. You can be different.
Sport is a wonderful antidote to so many of the things that cause us stress.
If I didn't say anything, I would be letting down a lot of people who have been bullied over the years.
Cooperation is critical. It is the thing that holds your team or group together. It's the thing that holds our society together.
It's not a privilege to play sport. It's a right if that's what a woman chooses to do. Any sport, it's her choice.
Cycling is a fantastic solution to a lot of problems that we have in society right now. Transport, infrastructure, childhood obesity and long-term health, heart disease and so on.
Battling against being in a male-dominated industry, you always felt you had to be strong, try to look stronger and match it with the men, and had to be as vigorous as them to be seen to be as strong. The movie named Ride Like a Girl was Ride Like a Girl, and be proud of it.
Sports in Australia, which captivates the hearts and minds of both sexes, across all ages and within all social economic groups, has a massive and very powerful role to play in changing attitudes to hosts of very important issues.
Good evening and welcome to the 2022 Deakin University David Parkin Oration for Sport and Social Change. I begin by acknowledging the Aboriginal custodians on the lands on which we assembled tonight. On behalf of those present here, I pay our respects to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations and acknowledge elders past, present and future. Deakin University's Chancellor, Mr John Stanhope AO, is an apology for tonight, but he's ably deputised Deputy Chancellor Ms Carol Boyer-Spooner. Welcome, Carol. I also welcome Deakin's Vice-Chancellor, Professor Ian Martin, fellow council members, members of the executive, distinguished guests, including the Honourable Jeff Kennett, who has been a great supporter of this event and, as you saw, was previously delivered the 2015 oration. Colleagues, friends of Deakin. I also extend a warm welcome to the many viewers who are watching tonight's oration on the live stream that we have running across the Deakin portal. Let me begin by welcoming our patron, Dr David Parkin OAM. The Parkin Oration was established by the University Council in 2012 in recognition of David's contribution to Deakin and to acknowledge the outstanding legacy across the sporting landscape. While David's playing and coaching careers are stamped with the highest of distinction, it is his enduring commitment to education and the role that sport can play in promoting positive social change that draws us together tonight. Tonight we will give witness to the 9th Parkin Oration. And following on from a memorable evening last year with Michelle Payne, we once more give up the spotlight to a trailblazer in women's sport. Against that backdrop, it is my great pleasure to welcome our guest of honour tonight, Emma Kearney. Peerless, as the only 6-time All-Australian in the 6-year history of the AFLW, Emma has earned her standing at the very top of the women's game. Welcome, Emma. We look forward to sharing your story with us tonight. Joining Emma on stage tonight will be Daniel Harford, our interviewer for tonight's oration. Harf, as he's affectionately known across the sporting landscape, had a distinguished AFL career with Hawthorn and Carlton before commencing a career in media. He can be regularly heard commentating AFLW games, and I think he still hosts the Breakfast Club on RSN 927, among other things. Importantly, he is currently the coach of Carlton's AFLW team, so understands the nuances of the game, of the women's game, and is infinitely qualified to facilitate tonight's conversation. Welcome, Harf. The Deakin social media team invite you to tweet messages throughout the evening using the official hashtag #ParkinOration as shown on the screen. This invitation is extended to viewers online as well. To commence formal proceedings to the evening, I welcome to the stage Deakin University Vice Chancellor, Professor Ian Martin.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you for the promotion. As Deakin's Vice-Chancellor, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here to the Edge on Wurundjeri country for tonight's David Parkin oration. In opening, I want to acknowledge and thank David, who's with us here again tonight. Our guest speaker, Emma Carney, it's so great to see you here, although I'm not sure our Geelong girls will forgive me for standing next to you and getting photographed on social media tonight. Daniel, we haven't met before, but it's a privilege to see you here tonight, and thank you for being part of this evening. And Jeff Kennett, past Premier. Jeff, great to see you here. And those of us who live in Geelong have just about forgiven you for the very visible celebration of 2 weeks ago. Deakin staff and students, past and present, friends of Deakin, welcome to the 9th David Parkin Oration for Sport and Social Change. As Chris has said, the oration was established in 2012 to highlight the potential for the collateral benefit for sport in producing the kind of social change, the kind of community we all want to see. The global sports industry is pervasive. It features in everybody's lives, and that puts it in a unique position to be a positive agent of change. Whether that's around social justice, social inclusion, gender equality, cultural cohesion, the list goes on. For Deakin, our excellence in sport education and research is part of what we do. And you saw David talking about the start of that in 1990, and it's just fantastic to see how from those beginnings, well, in fact, that wasn't quite the beginning, because I think actually the first course that Deakin ever offered was actually physical education at the Warren Ponds campus. But from those key beginnings when we started to move into the elite and high-performance sport arena, it's enabled us to build and develop, but not only just from elite performance, from those collateral benefits, from social inclusion, from making sure that our Deakin values are played out in what we do in sport. The Australian psyche is defined by sport. As you can tell from my voice, I grew up in the UK, and the aphorism that an Australian will get excited about competitive tiddlywinks was there. It's true. It's part of this nation's psyche. It gives purpose to so many. It gives meaning to so many. It creates tribalism, but actually tribalism in the best way. And there is nothing like walking out here from a game when teams of both sides have been there, whatever the result, you just get this huge sense of community that I think Australia does far, far better than many, many countries. And I think we should absolutely celebrate that. Not perhaps what used to happen in Premier League football in the UK when I grew up. Deakin plays a part in this pride, and we see it as really important. Our reputation has grown, and we are #1 ranked in the world for sports science, which is a truly remarkable achievement. And I'm going to plug it even harder, because actually we're the only Australian university that has a #1 ranking for any subject in those particular global rankings, which is truly special, and a tribute to those who for so many years have built that expertise. There's been many features to it, but one of the most striking and most important, and I take my hat off to my predecessor, Jane Den Hollander, who spent a lot of time championing this, is our engagement with women's sport, both at the elite level, but also at that boundary between community sport and elite level, where so much of the change needs to happen. We're in partnership with the Deakin Melbourne Boomers, and I do want to call them out. They were WNBL champions this year for the first time in 10 years. It was so good to see. Links to Netball Victoria through the Vixens, the AFLW and VFLW Cats teams in Geelong, and as you saw on there, the link with Cadell Evans and the Cadell Evans Women's Road Race, which is now a UCI event, which we hope will return next year, having had 2 years of not being able to take place. Tonight's speaker, Emma Kearney, is another wonderful high achiever and trailblazer, not just for what she achieved on the grass, but what she's achieved outside of that as well, and it's just so good to see. For the 6th time, as Chris has said, in the AFLW All-Australian team, a unique position for her. The conversation tonight is one that all of us are looking forward to, and her insights on the topic, you can't be what you can't see, are going to, I think, help and shape and guide us. I don't want to give too much away. I know we'll hear a little bit about the journey in footy and other sports, the arrival of AFLW and the evolution of the women's game and her life outside football. But tonight is not just about Emma delivering the oration, it's also to thank David for his wonderful leadership, the gift that he's given us through this annual oration, the contribution that he's made to leadership in sport and in education. It's actually Dr. David Parkin. We gave him an honorary doctorate in 2013 in recognition of that contribution. And I'd now like to invite David up to the stage to say a few words. David, in advance, thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you both Professor Hickey and Professor Martin for your very generous and kind remarks. If my memory serves me right, this oration marks now the 9th year. I think we missed one because of COVID. We have underlined the significant role that leadership, sport and education is playing and hopefully will continue to play in the lives of all Australians. We have been honoured, as mentioned, with lectures and interviews from Andrew Demetrio, Kevin Sheedy, Jeff Kennett, Caroline Wilson, Rick Charlesworth, Susan Alberti, Cadell Evans and Michelle Payne. Each has continued to promote the advancement of public knowledge by exploring the challenges and opportunities for sport to act as a driver of social change. Now in my 80th year, having retired from both my educational and sporting involvements, some physical and mental adjustments have become necessarily. Not easy, but necessarily. Fortunately, as patron of the Mailbag Foundation, which I'd have to say Deakin continues to be a much appreciated sponsor, SALT that's been mentioned tonight, Sport and Life Training, another Deakin student is in charge of that. Gox, the gentleman of Kokoda Group that I've been a part of and remained with this group, having had lunch with them today. And GYE, which is now becoming the Geelong Youth Engagement Group, becoming a fantastic influence, not just in preparing young children, youth in Geelong who have been in a bit of strife and providing leadership for them, but doing some enormous work in the health education and driver education area as well. So things continue to change. They excite and fulfil me. Back in 1995, during the AFL Grand Final, on the eve and during the parade, a small girl continued to run all the way down Collins Street trying to touch Stephen Silvanti, who was sitting on the back of the sports car next to me, who, and nearly exhausted, Sos grabbed and placed her between us for the remainder of the cavalcade. That young lady was 16-year-old Samantha Lane. During the following year, she became the first editor of the Carlton Football Club Blues News, and that became the start of her career in journalism. It's been for me one of those ongoing special friendships. Her extremely well-written book, you should read, Raw, published in 2018, gives a detailed insight into the fascinating story which has become the AFLW of today. Emma Kearney has become a remarkable pioneer player, now completing or just completed her 12th season of senior AFLW football. On top of her obvious football prowess, Emma also played cricket at the highest level, representing both the Victorian Spirit and Melbourne Stars in the Women's Big Bash League. I remember well when she caused controversy in 2016. Cricket Australia wanted her to prioritise cricket training and playing matches over her AFL training and involvement. Emma voiced her public opinion and criticism in the light of the semi-professional nature of the league that she was going into. Her football record is remarkable, to say the least. 5 times Melbourne University best and fairest in the VWFL and the VFLW. AFLW Premiership Player in 2018, 6 times, as mentioned before, AFL All-Australian 2017 through to 2022, including being named captain just a few weeks back, and twice the Western Bulldogs BNF in 2017 and 2018. It's a remarkable record. I first met Daniel Harford in late 2000 when I became the Hawthorn Football Club's Director of Football. It has become a long and cherished friendship to me with him and Rebecca, but I expect probably not for half. It would be fair to say that I provoked Daniel like few others, having averaged 20 plus possessions a game for 6 seasons prior to my arrival. I was far from empathetic with his ageing and unresponsive body. My public apology, Daniel, for the way I carried on. I bet you were delighted when Peter Schwab sacked me a year later. As the current successful coach of the Carlton Football Club AFLW team and your ongoing radio broadcasting, I was delighted when you accepted our invitation to MC this event. Would you please welcome both Emma and Daniel to the stage? Thank you.
It's just amazing how some people can just flick a switch and it's on.
Carney takes off. What a snap! What a goal!
Carney is probably the quietest person off the field, but as soon as she crosses that line, whether it's talking smack, being extremely physical but fair, she's an awesome footballer.
Pops it up, Carney for goal.
Her footy craft is just excellent.
I first started playing at Melbourne Uni. Emma Carney was around there as well, so it was good to have her around, and I looked up to her because just the way she went about it.
A real competitor out on the field.
Through Carney, didn't she grit the teeth in that third term?
First meeting her, I was so scared. I was absolutely petrified, just given her list of awards attached to her name. I played against her prior to meeting her and realised she's got a lot of white line fever, so I was a little bit intimidated coming in.
Racking up the numbers to Carney. How did she have all that space? Off to Riddell. Oh, Carney got in front.
Great leader. She definitely takes us to the next level.
She leads North Melbourne incredibly well, the way that they have entered the competition and been successful from the start.
Speaking of the action, North have got it in their grasp at the moment. Carney hustles forward.
Then she has a bounce. She tucks the footy under her arm.
She's the most supportive person around the club, and she's happy to give you a spray, but she'll be the first to sort of nurture you and pick you up.
Steps around traffic. Carney will run her down.
Lucky to be on her team. Yeah, she just wants to win.
She's an awesome footballer, an excellent leader, and the game is lucky to have her.
That's an even better intro. Firstly, may I apologise if there is a shiny head syndrome going on. Just do this and just cover it off. You'll be fine. I did use the anti-shine moisturiser tonight, but it doesn't work all the time. But it's nice to be with you. And Parko, anytime you get an offer to come and represent David Parkin in anything, you just say yes. It doesn't matter what it is, you just say yes. I do cherish our friendship, even though you're Our subject matter tonight and our interviewee is nothing short of iconic when it comes to Australian rules football. And I think her record, has been mentioned previously in the introductions, is absolutely second to none and absolutely earned. And it's a real pleasure to have you with us tonight. Emma, welcome to you.
Thanks, Harf.
Tell me about Cavendish. Take me all the way back to Cavendish. Where is it? Because in 2016, the Australian census tells me there were 334 people living in this town. of Cavendish, where you grew up. Tell me more about it.
So I'll save you from getting your Google Maps out, but it's in the Western Districts of Victoria, so it's sort of in between Hamilton and Horsham, probably closer to Hamilton. If you also don't know where Hamilton is, it's sort of near Warrnambool. It's inland to Warrnambool. If you don't know where Warrnambool is, well, forget it. But yeah, it was a really small country town. It sort of featured a pub, of course, a post office, and probably a general store. And then my mad sporting family. We grew up on a farm there, and I suppose that's where my love of footy, but probably sport in general, sort of grew.
Tell us about that family unit. What did it look like? How did it operate?
Yeah, so I've mum and dad's absolutely sports mad, whether it's footy or cricket. But then it's also older brother who pretty hopeless at footy and or sport actually. But he just loved it anyway though. But I've got a twin sister. She is complete opposites to me. She liked her sports, but not sports mad like me. And then I've got a younger brother as well. So it was mostly myself and him out in the backyard playing a lot of our sports. So mum had 4 kids under 4. So remarkable effort. Dad on the farm. You know, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. It didn't influence my childhood at all. You know, didn't have a lot, but we had a lot of love and support and care for one another, and I think that's been a huge influence into shaping the person that I am today. So
what were your dreams back then, when on the sheep station and farming and going to school or in a small country town? What were your dreams?
I grew up as an Essendon supporter, so my dream was to play for Essendon and, you know, run out with the likes of James Hird, who was my absolute idol growing up. Unfortunately, I was quick to realise that that wasn't a dream of mine. I couldn't do it at that age because there was no opportunities for me to play football at the highest level.
So when did you realise you had talent in sport?
Maybe when the boys started to get annoyed at me when I was beating them. Maybe that was when. I don't know, to be honest. When you grow up in a country town, you're sometimes this big fish in a small pond, I guess. So I didn't realise what I could possibly achieve. I think for me, sport was something that I was good at. I was never, the smartest kid at school. I was never one that, wanted to sit still and do my work. I was best when I was using my hands. And I suppose for me, it was just about having fun. And when you do something that you love and do something that you're good at, that's when you can hopefully achieve as much as you possibly can.
So being good at something, and what you said before resonates, that you didn't see a future as an athlete, particularly in football and cricket at the time. Did that annoy you? Were you someone that was annoyed by that as a young age? That this is, what's going on here? How does this work?
Yeah, I reckon it wasn't until I was 12. So I was doing some Auskick, and then it wasn't until I was 12 where I was told, Emma, you can't play football any longer. And so I was a little bit annoyed because my older brother could continue to play, and as I mentioned, he was pretty hopeless. So I found
He's copping a good cook tonight, the brother.
Yeah, he was, poor thing. But so I reckon it was that moment, and then I distinctly remember being in the lounge room. We were all sitting around watching the footy, and it was only men on TV. And at that particular moment, I walked out because I thought, no, this is just ridiculous that I have the skill set to be able to play at a high level, but the sport that I loved growing up, I could no longer have that opportunity. I mean, thankfully now that we've got the AFLW competition, so that dream has become a reality.
Yeah, well, the whole theme of you can't be what you can't see, which I'm keen to flesh out with you a little bit later on. So how did you park that then? So you've had that realisation that this wasn't going to be your life. How did you park that and move on to education? You went to university in Ballarat. Was it easy to park it, or did you have some struggles with that?
No, I think it was easy to park. In saying that though, I had cricket, so I was able to continue playing cricket again against the boys. I think I think one of my teammates mentioned that I had white line fever. I was probably one of the most hated cricketers in the Hamilton area because I would bowl a bloke out and then give him a bit of a send-off or something, or I'd sledge him. So, I wasn't well liked. So they were probably glad that I went to Ballarat for uni. But I suppose I still had that drive to play an elite level sport, and cricket was that option for me. But I probably wasn't as talented with cricket, and I didn't really think it was an option to play at a high level. So for me, it was about finding different avenues to what my career would look like. My PE teachers growing up were a huge influence in my life. So I guess for me, I really wanted to be a PE teacher. I loved connecting with younger people as well, and that education side of thing really drew me in. So that's why I wanted to get into it.
When did footy re-emerge into your life?
Yeah, it was when I was turning 21. So I had done a little bit of cricket, and then one of my friends from cricket actually was playing at Melbourne Uni, and she sort of said, "Why don't you come down?" And so for me, I was like, yeah, why not? Luckily for me, I was a poor uni student, so sports regos are incredibly expensive. And so I was playing hockey at the time, and hockey is very, very expensive to play. So luckily I had a really supportive auntie who sort of said, "Look, I'll pay for your rego if you want to play footy." And so she did, and I'm very grateful because, I got into footy and I just fell in love with the game again. And at no point did I ever think that I would be in this position today talking, but also representing an AFL footy club. So I'm really grateful that we were able to, produce what we're able to do on the footy field at AFLW level.
So we know what the product is now. Those that are AFLW watchers and followers and involved intimately, like you are. What was the VWFL like back then when you found it again at 21 years of age at Melbourne Uni? What was it like? What was that world like?
I think for me, we use the term belonging a lot when we talk about sport and giving people a sense of belonging. And I reckon for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. I felt like there was people that were similar to me. Growing up in country Victoria, I had friends, but they weren't close because they were really different for me. So I think for me, that was probably the first time in my life where I felt really comfortable being who I was. And, we played on some of the most horrific fields. Melbourne Uni Oval is absolutely immaculate in summer. It's like the best oval, but in winter, it is a mud heap. So the whole field, I remember one game, the entire field was mud, and it was almost impossible to run in, but that's the sort of style it was. It was that great community feel. You go to the club rooms after the game, you present the best on, you have a few drinks with the other team. It was that really social thing. So that's something that I really love, and it's something that sometimes gets lost when you're at that elite level. I'm not sure if you sort of found the same growing up, and as footy in your era sort of started to get a little bit more professional, if you noticed that change as well.
Yeah, well, my love dissipated significantly when I was involved in the game, for the game, because you grow up, as you rightly say, playing it because you love it. You happen to be pretty good at it, but you play it because you love it. And then it becomes a job, and it becomes pressurised, and the stress of all that takes its toll. I found my love again coaching local footy. And when I retired, that was when my love was reignited for footy because of what it was and what it really, in its purest sense, is. And that's why I think many people love AFLW, and because it's a totally different environment particularly to the AFL men's competition, from what my understanding and experience has been. So it's a very interesting dynamic of what footy is, what it should be, what you make it to be, and how it affects your life. But the AFLW system certainly kept me going for my love of the game. But nothing about me, we'll talk about you. What happened in 2015, Em? Because in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014 and 2016, you won the Melbourne Uni Best and Fairest. Did you get ahead of yourself?
2015 is a long time ago,
Well, I'm just asking. It was four in a row, and then you dropped off the perch. I'm concerned about your mindset.
No, I'm just going to say I helped the younger players come through and they got better.
Righto.
So I helped develop maybe.
Yeah, I could bet you one of the next year, so it's a lie. Tell me about, you mentioned hockey there, you mentioned cricket, you mentioned footy. You're clearly athletic, you're competitive, which we learned from your teammates in the little play on. What is it about footy? Why is footy different? Why is it the one?
You're not restricted to zones. So I never liked netball because of that restriction. You can come from all shapes and sizes and play the game. There's that physical element, but then there's those quick decision making, that composure that you are required to play at as well. It's the speed, but then it's the endurance, all in one. It's one of the most unique games. I often hear people that have come from the US and watch our game and go, "The happening here?" Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have sworn then. And I probably understand what they mean, but it is just one of those games that you just love. And one of the best feelings is when you win a game, and that 20 minutes after the game, when you're in the rooms with your teammates, just sitting around, talking, celebrating the win. That's one of the greatest feelings of your week.
Exhausted more often than not. That's a fair point. Yeah. So 2013, I think, was the first exhibition game between the Western Bulldogs and Melbourne. So it took the best from the country, and there was a draft, or a formalised draft. The Bulldogs and the D's played the game. It was the first one at the MCG?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was sort of the premise for the AFLW, but when you played in that game, you were drafted by the Dogs for that occasion. When you played in that game, what did you think was happening? Was there anything going through your mind about what was happening to women's footy, or to as a component of the women's sport in Australia?
I suppose that was probably the first time. I actually distinctly remember my brother actually messaging me and saying, "Oh, there's going to be a women's draft and there's going to be an exhibition game." And I was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I just thought, this is amazing. So I think at that point, that's when I sort of thought, this is the step forward to having a national competition. There'd always been rumours of, 2020 was the earmarked as the start. So for us to then, back in 2013, to have something starting then, I thought that was a really good step in the right direction. And then obviously playing at the MCG for the first time was an amazing experience. I mean, there was certainly times where you feel like you're well out of your depth and you shouldn't be playing, you shouldn't have the right to be playing here, but
So you felt that, did you? You felt the fact that this, why are we here?
Oh, not so much why are we here, why am I here?
Right.
There's certainly times where you doubt your own ability, whether you deserve to be there, because you feel like you're potentially not good enough. I think for me, 2013, I'd probably been playing footy for 4 years, so there was others that had been playing the game a lot longer, Daisy Pearce, Steph Giocchi, just to name a few. And so I felt like I hadn't earned the right to be playing with the likes of those players.
So how strongly is that burnt into your mind that night, and the energy that would have been created that night? Because I can only imagine, I wasn't there, but I can only imagine it would have been an unbelievable feeling for everyone involved in that. You mentioned the MCG, it's a big stage, it's possibly the seed that was going to be watered to be in the AFLW competition. We didn't know that at the time. What was going through everyone's mind, and the chat, the conversation that night?
Yeah, it was just a surreal moment. I think, footy is one of those games that just everything happens so quickly. So, I made sure that I tried to soak in as much of the atmosphere as possible. It was probably one of the biggest crowds that we had, because it was played before the men's game. So we had a lot of the crowd come in before that. So it was probably one of the biggest crowds that we'd played in front of before. So to hear that noise was something really unique as well. So, I don't know, it was just an incredible experience that it's really hard to describe.
So through the next couple of years, you're playing footy at Melbourne Uni, you've played in a few of the exhibition games, you're at Victoria Spirit playing cricket in the WNCL and the Melbourne Stars and the WBBL. And then, so life was pretty good, you were having a bit of fun, you were playing cricket sort of semi-professionally, playing footy on the side, life was all right. And then Parko's point about the letter from Cricket Australia to make you or ask you to prioritise cricket ahead of football of the 2016 season. Take us through that conversation. You were really strong in it, but take us through why you felt you needed to be and what the conversation was like.
Yeah, so I suppose 2017, first year of AFLW, I think there was 5 or 6 of us athletes that were both doing AFLW and the Big Bash. And so Cricket Australia really wanted to make a stance and wanted to, stamp their authority. We're playing in the summer period. We want to make that a priority, but we were only getting paid a part-time wage, and I didn't feel like I could sign that contract to make cricket a priority. I didn't really agree with what they were trying to do, and so, if I take myself back to, say, even 10 years ago, I was someone that was really shy and quiet and probably wouldn't stand up for myself. But as I've sort of gotten older and more matured, I wanted to stand up for something that I thought was right. And so, I made the really bold statement. Cricket Australia didn't like it. I had a few phone calls from them saying probably shouldn't have said it so bluntly as well. But I guess that's who I am. I've never sort of swayed away from how I am. So. But as a result, the women's Big Bash players are now getting paid full-time. So, I shouldn't say as a result. There's been a lot of other things, great things that have happened.
No, claim it. I'd be claiming it too.
I can take maybe a small bit of credit from that. But yeah, it was a brave decision from me, but I thought it was the right one at the time.
Well, in many respects, it started the conversation about equal pay and the opportunity to make a living out of sport for women in Australia, because up until that point there hadn't really been that opportunity in any sport to do it. So it probably was the genesis of the whole conversation, really. So you should claim the credit, and I'd be putting an invoice in if I was you for most of the players out there at the moment. Jeez. Just a little clip of the ticket along the way.
Nice, yeah, it'd be nice.
Yeah. So it was a really bold stance, and it took a lot of courage. Did you seek counsel from anyone as you were going through that process, or was it just you playing your own game there?
No, it was pretty much just me playing my own game. The thing is, I made this statement, and then the Melbourne Stars flew us over to New Zealand to play just some practice matches. So I was kind of out of the limelight a little bit, and then I was, got approached by our media manager and said, "Oh, geez, what did you say?" And so she had to sort of coach me through it. But as I said, I'm not going to sort of change who I am, and it was a bit of a bold statement, but it's made some progress.
So Gil drops the bomb. As you mentioned, 2020 was the timeline initially for the AFLW competition to exist. It started in 2017. Gil drops that bomb into 2016. Clubs are panicking, trying to put programs together, get lists together. You ended up at the Bulldogs. What was life like? What did you walk into at the Bulldogs? Start of that pre-season for the 2017 inaugural AFLW season.
It was a bit of chaos. The Bulldogs had just come off their premiership win in 2016 in the men's competition, and because they had a big family day the day after the grand final, they had 30,000 people on Whitten Oval. So Whitten Oval was completely destroyed. So we couldn't train on Whitten Oval. So we started pre-season at Maribyrnong College on a hockey field. So I thought, Jesus, is this the AFLW experience? Playing on a hockey field, so it was unique, but it was great to meet our teammates, some who I'd played against a lot previously in the VFLW, some that I probably hated too, that you had to quickly change your perception of what or who they were, but also how I was perceived by others. So it was just, I guess it was just so full on. I was probably fortunate that I had some experience at the high level, so I knew how to train at the highest standard, gym programs and all that sort of recovery process and all that sort of stuff was second nature to me, so it wasn't so unique, where others I found really struggled with that transition, particularly as they were working full time, and then all of a sudden this extra load, it became a bit of a stress for them.
I'm really lucky in my role. as coach of the Blues, currently we're interviewing potential draftees from the NAB Championship and the AFL Academy, the Under-18 Academy, and the players that have been playing the last couple of weeks. And only yesterday we had 2 players from the Victoria Metro team that we interviewed back to back, and they both referenced being at Princes Park for the first game in season 1, 2017, Collingwood Carlton. They were both there. So they would have been, what are we now? They would have been 10, 12 maybe. And they found their way through to a pathway program. And they both said individually, without solicitation, that's the night I realised I could. So it was a packed house. They locked the gates at Princes Park for that game. It was an iconic moment in Australian sport, I reckon. It should be celebrated as such. Did you, where were you that night? Were you at the ground or were you watching from afar?
Yeah, I was at the ground.
What did you think? The ground's full. Women's football to this level had never been seen before. The ground is full. It was the most perfect night ever for it as well, just by the way.
It was. What I loved was, Princes Park is one of my favourite places in Melbourne. Don't get any ideas. I'm not coming to Carlton, by the way.
Well, I noticed there wasn't any Carlton highlights there in that little clip before, were there? Heavy tag.
But I just remember driving there and just seeing so many people walking there with their Carlton or their Collingwood scarves on. And then when I got into the ground, I was one of the lucky ones that didn't get locked out. Like, my heart was racing because I was just like, wow, 24,000 people coming to witness the very first time that Carlton and Collingwood are playing against each other. It was incredible. And then seeing someone like Darcy Vescio light it up on the big stage was something really special. And I reckon it wasn't until the next day where you see it in the paper, splashed on the front or the back paper, like, that's pretty remarkable. That's something that we hadn't seen in ever.
Was it intimidating to be able to see that, the expectation from the public on that night, and it changes through the journey, of course, but to be responsible for upholding that?
I don't think it was intimidating. I think for me it was motivating and it was exciting. So we didn't play until the Sunday. That was our very first game. And so for me it was just about that anticipation. All right, you've had your glory times at Collingwood and Carlton. It's time for the Bulldogs, who I played for at that time. It's time for us to shine. So that was probably my mentality going into the first game.
What were your mates, your family and friends, what were they saying about it? So they would have seen that night or the build up to it in that moment. What did they start talking to you about when you caught up with them?
I think they were just really excited to see, to see how I would go for our first game at Whitten Oval. I think they were pretty blown away with how well it was received and the growth of the game. But I think they were just mostly just really excited as to seeing where this league could be taken.
How'd you go in that first game?
I went all right. Have you got the stats there?
Oh, well, I know the stats, but you dominated, unsurprisingly. You dominated. You had game high 23, I think, was the number. Remembering 17-minute quarters, shortened quarters. Dominated proceedings on round 1 to set the scene for the future. So, tell me about the feedback. Social media has been around for a little while now, and this was seen by many as an invasion. Women's footy was an invasion on men's footy from a lot of people, and the world of social media isn't overly friendly at times. What were the negative parts of being a part of this in its infancy, from a social media perspective or the feedback perspective?
Yeah, probably the biggest negative is the sexist comments that you receive. I'd be one of many AFLW, women athletes that would receive sexist remarks online. So whether it's based on what you look like, I've been told that I look like a man many times. I've been told to get back in the kitchen. What am I doing on the footy field? I've actually just been abused when I'm kicking at the local oval by a man driving past. So that was a nice experience. I really wish that he came out and showed me how good he was, but he kept driving by, unfortunately. But so it isn't just social media, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Luckily, when AFLW started, I was 27, I think I was. So I was at an age where I was really comfortable with who I was. But for some of those younger players, were you coaching Taylor Harris when she
Yes, I was.
received? So how did she deal with those comments?
Well, she was quite remarkable, I must admit, because we had a final that next weekend too, and she's dealing with the hoo-ha of that now famous kick, but the statue was around here somewhere. I'm not sure if it still is or not. She was quite remarkable. Her ability to compartmentalise that and focus on her job at hand from a football perspective was nothing short of scintillating. I've never seen anything like it, because I've never seen anything like the vitriol and the abuse that she'd received from all corners of the world, really, on the back of that photograph. So she's quite a remarkable human in many respects. I don't think many people on the planet would have been able to do what she did and compartmentalise that and say, I've got that, I'll deal with that, but I've got to focus on this and move on within 3 days. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, and we always get told, just ignore it.
I was going to ask you, how does it make you feel?
And that's one of the most annoying things someone can say to you, because people deal with things in different situations. Like for me, I'm not a big social media user anyway, so I just don't really read comments, and you sort of take the good with the bad. You don't want to get too ahead of yourself with some of the really positive comments that are said about you, but then you also don't want to get those negative comments to let you down. But I think with some of these young athletes that are coming through, we can't just tell them to ignore it, because that's not helping them as well. So we've just got to be really conscious that people deal with things in different ways, and we've got to be able to support them with however we can. So
you're an educated person, you're a mature woman. Why do you think it happens? What's your take on what drives someone to get involved in that level of abuse on any forum?
I think people are bored. I think people potentially just want to see a reaction. They don't feel good about themselves, so they feel like they can easily target someone online, and then they get lots of likes for it, and so then they start to feel good about it. So there's an element where I think, what's wrong with you, that person? Like, there has to be something wrong, because those that, like for example, if I'm scrolling through my Twitter, and I'm not a huge soccer fan, but I'll just scroll past it. I'm not going to bother commenting saying, why is this on my feed? This is a rubbish sport, things like that. But this is the stuff that we read as athletes constantly, time and time again. So my question is, what is wrong? Like, are they sad? Are they not happy with their lives? What is it? But I think it has to be to do with boredom and, not happy with their lives.
So we're sort of harnessing the negative side of it at the moment. We'll get to the positives shortly. One of the great conversation points for people that don't like women's sport, but women's footy in particular, is, it's so bloody congested. They can't kick it far enough. They don't run fast enough. They don't hit targets. There's only 17-minute quarters. What are they doing? Why are they bothering? My take on it is, anyone who thinks women's football should look like men's football is an imbecile. That's my take on it. What's your take on that line of feedback, that it's nowhere near as good as the men's?
Well, we've just got to stop comparing these two sports. They're different. We'll just accept it for, its differences. I look at women's basketball. I actually prefer watching women's basketball because it's actually more tactical, because the women aren't as athletically gifted, so they can't just run and jump and dunk it. So they have to use a lot more strategy. So we've just got to accept that the product is going to look different, and that is okay. But also have a bit of understanding that the AFLW is still in its infancy. We've still got girls, or sorry, I should say women, that have started the game when they were, like for myself, I started when I was 21. There's still those players and athletes that are still learning. So let's judge what it looks like in 10, 15 years' time when those girls that you interviewed at that you're trying to pick up in the draft, what's their names, by the way?
Can't say too
Who are
much.
you after?
Can't say too much.
But when those girls, they were 10 or 11 when AFLW was first around. So they've grown up being footballers. So, they're going to bring different dynamics. Their skill level will increase and the strategy around it will look a lot different to what it is now.
Your face beamed when you talked about those girls and they were 10 and 11. So let's forget the negative stuff. Let's focus on the positives. What's been some of the great moments of being a part of this world that you never perhaps thought you'd experience, or that you did experience and it was just out of this world?
Yeah, well, I love it when we have our fresh draftees come in and they talk about the first year of AFLW and they were like, I was 12 and I'm like, Jesus, I was 27. That makes me feel real old. But as I was saying, when I was 12, I was walking out of the living room because there's only the men that I was watching play. So for them to have that and to have role models, there's some that are really intimidated by some players. We had one of our draftees, she was so excited because Jazz Garner followed her on Instagram. Jazz Garner's an amazing player for North as well. So, I think that's what really excites me. I have done a lot of coaching too at junior level, and to be honest, they're not that excited that I'm coaching them. They just think, oh yeah, it's just Emma. But they do go to the games and they just love the sport and love talking to me about AFLW and talking to me about different players and things like that. So I think that connection that you can have with young people is really special.
And I think that's where it wins. I think that's where women's sport wins, and particularly women's footy. And from my own experience, when I first got the job at Carlton, my son was playing footy in Camberwell in his junior footy club, and they had their presentation night. And I just got the job, so I thought I'd pull in a favour, and I asked Darcy Vescio to come to the presentation night. And Darcy, being an outstanding human, decided that was a good idea and probably something you should do for the new coach. So Darcy came along, which was lovely. And she was fashionably late. They were fashionably late for the evening, and I met her in the car park, and we had to go in the side door because the back of the room was jam-packed. So you got 22 teams, I think, kids from under 7, under 8 to under 16s, plus all the families and friends at the presentation night. Chockers. Jonathan Brown's hosting. His little girl plays there as well. And Das, we bring in through the side door. And they go first, and I'm behind watching and seeing what reaction they get. And as soon as Das put her head through the room, through the door into the room, every kid, 8 to 16, boy, girl, turned to see who it was, and their jaw dropped. This was year 2, 3, so 2019, built up to 2019. So these kids saw Darcy Vescio, the footballer. They didn't see a chick playing footy or just a woman who sometimes was on the telly. They saw Darcy Vescio, the footballer, and they fell in love straight away. And all the parents, most of the parents did the same thing. And it was a really crystallising moment for me that that's where you win. Because the imbeciles on the road who abuse you for kicking the footy at the park, they're done. I'm not sure we can win with them. Mm-mm. But the kids, the young generation who see women footballers, women cricketers, female athletes, as just on the telly, in the paper, on Instagram, whatever it might be, as the norm, that's where we win. So it was a really crystallising moment for me that whilst there's an element of the population that have no interest, will not ever come across, will not ever learn to love women's sport because it's an invasion on what they grew up with and loved and knew, and taken some precious time off their TV. It's the kids that make us win. And it's those young girls that I interviewed yesterday who will remember that moment, that now they could be what they saw. Now I love that moment, but I can imagine that comes with a fair level of responsibility too from you and your cohort, that you are those role models, you are the ones that they are looking up to be the next generation of athletes. Does that weigh on you or does that excite you?
Probably more excites me, to be honest. But I think the most important thing for me is sometimes I don't realise the impact that I have. I don't necessarily see myself as a role model until, I had one of the draftees that said, "Oh, I used to look up to you." And so I was, you're a bit shocked because, I'm just Emma Carney. I play footy, but I also work full time and I have fun. So I take being a role model seriously. I realise the impact that us as women's athletes are having on society, but also on the impact that we're having on young boys and girls. So I think that's a really special thing, and hopefully that, we don't have to call us, AFL, like women's athletes. It's just we're an athlete.
Yep.
We don't have to distinguish between women's athlete and an athlete.
So are you seeing that evolve? Are you, from where you started to where you are now, have you seen that evolve? Do you feel it?
Yeah, I certainly do feel it. The AFL has a long way to go. I understand that. But if I look at cricket and how far that's come, it's remarkable. Some of my closest friends, got to play on the MCG in front of 84,000 people for the T20 World Cup. So that is incredible how far that sport has gone. But it just shows you that when you invest in something, you get a really good product and it develops the competition quicker. So I hope that the AFL can learn something from what cricket's done and start to invest.
I reckon they're paying some attention. Just a matter of time at the moment. What about the AFLW community? Give me some words. When I talk about the AFLW community, what words spring to mind?
Inclusive would be probably the biggest one.
Is that the most important one?
Yeah. I think for a lot of the women's athletes in the AFLW, the something that really drew them to the game was being included and feeling valued. And I think that's really brought about the community and the fans that come to the games. I reckon the only team that I get abused by, the fans, is Adelaide. When you go over and play, it's never good, but they're from Adelaide.
Well, that's Adelaide.
So we'll give them. I hope there's no Adelaide people in here.
What did you expect?
Yeah, well, that's true. But it's amazing. It'd be great to know how many people have actually been to an AFLW game, but it's really family friendly. You don't have those drunken yobbos yelling out abuse to players. Yep. You will hear the odd crowd murmuring about the umpiring, but...
And coach murmuring too, just quietly.
Yeah, I've heard you from the boundary. But yeah, it's one of those environments. You just have to experience it for yourself. It's completely different to the men's, and I think those suburban grounds that we play on is something really unique. It brings back what footy used to be like in the old days. You feel closer to the action. And I feel like the AFLW girls are more accessible. You feel like sometimes the men's, they sort of sign their footy after the game, they throw it into the crowd and they wander off and do their recovery. I feel like the women's athletes are more likely to have those conversations with fans and supporters after the games.
And I love that element of it, I must admit, and the community feel to it and the connection to the fans. I think it's really special. Do you think that as we start to move towards full-time programs that might be lost? Do you fear that might be a byproduct of becoming full-time?
The
sterilisation, so to speak?
Yeah, there is that worry for me. There's also that worry, and don't get me wrong, I really want to be professional. I want to be full-time, but there's an element for me that when I finish playing football, I lose Emma Carney the football, I don't lose Emma Carney. And so a lot of the time with some of these AFL men's players, they retire and they leave the game with nothing. We can't all be media stars like yourself, Half. So
it's a long road, Em. It's a long road.
But it can be quite challenging for them because they lose a big part of who they are. And that's something that I hope that as we do get more professional, there's still that time for the athletes to study and do a bit of work part-time, so they're still getting that experience as they're playing.
It's a great point, and the great David Parkin's always been very strong on this with his athletes, that there needs to be something else. He'd love them to do something else outside of football through his time in football. And I remember him, he won't remember it, but I remember him talking to me about what are you doing outside footy when he was at the Hawks. And I gave him some dodgy answer because I did nothing. I was just trying to look like I did something. But I got his point, and it was only when my career was starting to decline and my form and my place in the team was under a great stress and duress that I realised why he would say something like that, because you do become this product of the game. You're not, and I certainly wasn't. I felt really insecure as to what actually I was without the game. I was that person. My whole identity was football, and it was, upon reflection, it wasn't at the time because I had my head firmly up my backside, but upon reflection, it was that conversation that started to make me think about there's got to be something more. There has to be balance. Even though it's a professional lifestyle, there has to be balance. And this is why I quite like the format at the moment to a degree, because there is, you and your playing cohort have careers, university courses, jobs that you do to take your mind off the game itself. So how does that look going forward? If you're allowed to be full-time, do you want to make sure that there is access to outside work, education that does provide a different outlet for the players?
Absolutely. I think for me, if I didn't have full-time work, I'd be so consumed in the game, and my performances, if they weren't to the level I wanted to, then that would dictate my mood for the week. And that's not how I want to live my life. I'm someone that, if I have a bad loss or I have a bad game on the weekend, I get up on Monday morning and I start fresh because I go to work and I have different conversations that aren't related to footy, and I think that's a really good thing. So don't get me wrong, I do want it to be professional. I want the athletes to be able to train during the day rather than at night, not tired from a full day's work. But I think there needs to be at least 1 or 2 days where the players are doing some sort of professional development or study or doing some sort of work.
So what does the future hold for you then, apart from playing at Carlton for the next couple of years, which is great news for everyone, and congratulations on the deal. What does the future hold for Emma Carney?
Well, I'm really passionate about education. I'm working with the footy club in the education space in the community, so I would love to see where that takes me. But also I am really passionate about developing players, so I think some sort of coaching role, if you've got one down at Carlton, maybe in a few years' time though.
Playing coach, it can work. It can work.
I don't know about that. I'm getting on now, Half. So, but yeah, I think for me it'd be something ideally like that. I'm too competitive not to be involved in the game in some capacity. So I think for me it would be around coaching.
Well, we look forward to whatever it is that you do. Our theme tonight is you can't be what you can't see. If you can't see or haven't seen Emma Carney, you're just not looking. You're an icon of the game. You're an outstanding human being. We can't wait to see what the future holds. We appreciate your time tonight. Thank you and good luck.
No worries. Thanks,
Ladies and gentlemen, Emma Carney.
Thanks, Half.
I think the applause says it all. The 9th Parkin Oration will be remembered as a very special one with a pretty special person. I think we're going to commend this conversation to all sports sociology courses around the country, although it mightn't get great traction in Adelaide until we do a bit of editing. We draw on Emma's own words entitling tonight's oration, "You Can't Be What You Can't See," and in doing so sought to capture a storyline that might never have existed. We just stand in awe of your determination, your bravery, your commitment and your extreme talent. I just want to quickly draw on a personal reflection to pick up one of the themes that was so prevalent tonight. In 2016, before the AFLW was around, I was invited to be the inaugural coach of our first female football team at my local club in Geelong. No one was more excited about this initiative than a 12-year-old young girl, who I'll call Ashley, whose first love was football. Like Emma and many before her, Ash was playing junior football with the boys and saw no future in the game beyond under 13s. Talk of a female team was the flicker of a light that could change that. She was excited. Ash is now 18 and ever closer to her long-held aspiration of perhaps playing AFLW. Time will tell whether that eventuates, but at least across the last 6 seasons, Ash has been allowed to dream, something that Emma wasn't. Through vicarious projections on players like Emma Kearney, Ash can see what she can be. When she heard about tonight's oration, she texts me, and I want to read it to you because I think it says what I can't. I'll read it verbatim, though I've unpacked the myriad of acronyms and abbreviations that populate her texts. OMG, Chris, can't believe you're catching up with Emma Kearney. She was one of my heroes. Tell her I had a picture on my wall the year she won the Brownlow. I love the way she plays. I kind of modelled my game on her. She's tough and she's just awesome at reading the game. Tell her thanks for being an inspiration from me. From the rest of us here, Emma, thank you for being an inspiration and what you've given us tonight, including our first F-bomb. Please accept our warmest gratitude for making yourself available here this evening and for so generously sharing your story with us. While there's still a lot to be done around gender equality in football, your deeds and those of the pioneer generation of AFLW players have laid a foundation for future generations of young female footballers that will long benefit from. On behalf of Deakin University and everyone present here tonight, I present you with this gift as a token of our appreciation for your generosity in featuring in tonight's oration. It has been an honour and a privilege to have you here tonight and to gain a deeper insight into the person behind the footballer and why you have had such an impact on the lives and aspirations of so many footballers. I invite you to join me again in thanking Emma Kearney as featuring as a 2022 David Parkin Oration. And finally, to Half, on behalf of Deakin University, thank you for your formidable contribution to tonight's oration. It's easy to overlook the preparation you put in to being able to draw us into your conversation and make us feel like we were just eavesdropping on a chat between friends. Your passion for the game and your respect of AFLW was clearly evident tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking tonight's interviewer, Daniel Harford. I would like to close by publicly acknowledging the contribution of our wonderful events and multimedia team at Deakin. In particular, I thank Celeste Welsh and Anna Ubergang for supporting me in bringing this oration together tonight. Distinguished guests, one and all, on behalf of Deakin University, thank you all for your attendance here this evening and for your ongoing support of this event. I hope you can join us next year for the 10th anniversary of the David Parkin Oration for Sport and Social Change. A very good evening to you all.